At the time of this story, there was a great family gathering at the castle to meet the promised bridegroom of the Baron's daughter. An arrangement had been made between the Baron and an old nobleman of Bavaria for a marriage between their children. It would increase the importance of both families. The initial plans had been made in the usual way. The young people were engaged without having met each other, and the date set for the wedding. The young Count von Altenburg had been recalled from the army and was on his way to the castle to meet his promised bride. Messages had been received from Würzburg, where he was accidentally delayed. The messages indicated the day and time when he might be expected to arrive. The Castler was in a fever of preparation to provide him with a suitable welcome. The pretty bride had dressed with particular care. The two aunts had selected her clothing and quarreled all morning about what she should wear. The young lady had taken advantage of their argument to wear exactly what she wanted and had chosen very well. She looked as beautiful as any young bridegroom could wish for, and the excitement made her look even lovelier. The aunts constantly directed her, as single aunts usually take a great interest in the love affairs of others. They were giving her the final instructions on how to behave, what to say, and how to greet her intended husband. The Baron was just as busy with his preparation. He really had nothing to do, but being a naturally busy little man, he could not remain still when everyone else was rushing about the place. He walked from top to bottom of the castle, looking anxious. He continually called the servants from their work and then told them to work hard. He raced from room, as useless as a fly on a warm summer's day. Meanwhile, the meat had been prepared for the celebration. The kitchen was full of good food. Bottles of red and white wine had been brought up from the basement. Even a huge drum of Heidelberg beer was laid out. Everything was ready to greet the distinguished visitor in the true spirit of a German welcome. But there was still no sign of him. Hour by hour passed. The sun, which had been so warm over the rich forests of the Odenwald, was now setting along the tops of the mountains. The Baron went to the tallest tower in the castle to see if he could see any sign of the Count and his escorts. Once he thought he saw them. The sound of horns came floating up from the valley. A party of men was seen far below, riding slowly along the road. It was a false alarm, for when they reached the foot of the mountain, they suddenly rode off in a different direction. The sun, by now, had set, and the bats began to fly about in the evening light. It was getting dark, and the only movement on the road was the occasional worker returning home. While the old castle of Landshort was in a state of confusion, a very interesting scene was taking place in a different part of the Odenwald Mountains. The young Count von Altenburg was calmly riding toward his engagement without feeling any need to hurry. After all, the arrangement was definite, and the bride would certainly be waiting for him at the end of the journey. While the Count was in Würzburg, he had met a young soldier with whom he had fought on the German borders. Hermann von Starkenfaust, one of the most loyal and brave soldiers of the German army, was returning home to his father's castle. The castle was not very far from the castle of Baron von Landshort. Due to an ancient quarrel, the two families were enemies and total strangers to each other. In the warm moments of meeting, the young friends shared all their past adventures. The Count related the details of his intended marriage to a young lady he had never met. He added that he had been given excellent references about her beauty and character. As the route of the friends lay in the same direction, they agreed to travel the rest of the way together. If they set off from Würzburg early, there would be no need to hurry. The Count had given instructions for his escorts to follow him and then go on ahead. When the Count was not talking about the beauty and nature of his intended bride, they passed the time remembering battles they had fought side by side. Still talking, they were crossing one of the most lonely and thick forest passes in the Odenwald Mountains. It is well known that the Forest of Germany castles have had ghosts. At this time, the robbers were in particularly high numbers due to the groups of former soldiers wandering about the country. It is not surprising, then, that the two men were attacked by a pack in the middle of the woods. They defended themselves bravely, but had nearly lost the fight when the Count's escorts arrived and came to their aid. At sight of the Count's men, the robbers ran away, but not before the Count had received a deadly wound. He was slowly and carefully taken back to Würzburg. A religious brother with medical knowledge was called from nearby, but it was too late. With his dying breath, the Count asked his friend to go at once to the castle of Landshort and explain the reason for him not keeping the appointment with his bride. Although not the most enthusiastic of lovers, the Count was a sincere man and was concerned that the message reached the castle quickly. "Unless this is done," he said, "I will not rest quietly in my grave." Starkenfaust tried to calm him and promised to do as he was asked. He held out his hand to the Count, and the dying man pressed it in thanks, but soon fell into a confused mental state. He talked about his bride, his promised engagement, and his horse, and then died in the imagined act of jumping onto the animal's back.